question is similar, but it's in relation to Galway and the clarification on the overall strategy or master plan for countering the rising levels of sea. And I say that in the context of a number of reports that have come out. So if we look at the current status report for Ireland 2020, the EPA, the Marine Institute, they point out that sea level has risen by approximately 2 to 3 millimetres per year since the early 90s. If we look at the IPCC working group, due to relative sea level rise, extreme level events that occurred once per century are now going to occur at least annually. I don't think I need to tell you this, Minister, so I'm asking for clarification with that background.
Thanks, Deputy, and thanks for your question. And at the outset, I hope to visit Galway in the next couple of weeks, because I know that there's a lot of anxiety in relation to the situation in Galway. And the OPW has developed a climate change sectoral adaptation plan for flood risk management. It was approved by the government in October of 2019, and this plan identifies on a national scale how climate change could impact on flooding, flood risk and flood risk management, and prioritises this impacts in terms of urgency and action and the degree of impact. The long risk term goal adopted by the OPW on climate adaptation for flooding and flood risk management is set out in the plan is the promotion of sustainable communities and support our environment through effective management and the potential impacts of climate change on flooding and flood risk. The OPW's programme of flood relief schemes takes climate change into account. For example, the project brief for the detailed development of the Galway City Flood Relief Scheme includes a requirement for the scheme adaptation plan that will set out how climate change has been taken into account during the design and construction, and what future adaptation measures might be needed is what the Deputy is referring to, and more importantly when. The 6-year review is required under the EU Flood Directive will ensure that the current and future levels of flood risks to communities on our coast are kept under review and plans put in place to manage that risk as it becomes significant. The Government has established an interdepartmental group on managing coastal change to scope out an approach for the development of a national coordinated and integrated strategy. We can't do this on our own to manage the projected impact of coastal change to our coastal communities. And the interdepartmental group is jointly chaired by the Department of Housing, Local Government Heritage and by my own Department, the Office of Public Works, and will bring forward options and recommendations to the Government shortly for consideration.
My good Minister, I've seen the work firsthand that the Office of Public Works has done and the local authority. I was there for the CFRAM timeline from 2011 up to 16, and all of the work has been done and set out, all of the risks identified. There might well be some objectors, but my concern is over the delay. And so the steering committee that was set up was promised in March 20. It met for the first time in September 20. It was to produce a report within 6 months. That language has now become in due course. So it's of great concern to me. And my question is in relation to Galway City and County. So we have the planned works in the Spanish Arch, and with a date given 9 years from now, which is of great concern. And then there's also the works that are needed in the county. We know the percentage that live within 5 kilometres of the coast. It's almost 2 million people, and 40,000 live within 100 metres. So and Galway has a huge coastline. So we need specific answers in relation to timelines and works, and we'll certainly work with you.
Deputy, I don't disagree with you for 1 minute, and it is, while this has not fallen upon the OPW, actually the OPW are gladly taking on this responsibility because this is our bread and butter. We do require other departments to make sure that everybody plays a responsible role in this, because this is a societal problem. How our coast is going to change, and our coast will change, and you quite rightly say it, is going to require all departments coming to the table and making sure that we put forward a cohesive plan that takes into consideration how every department is going to bring their views to the table. So the plan that we're ultimately going to bring forward is going to have to be a holistic one, and it's going to have to be one that's going to have to reflect the views of all departments. So my view at the moment is, and it is not for the lack of energy, I can tell you on behalf of the Office of Public Works, we are trying to make sure that this is expedited as much as possible. And I have spoken to you, Deputy, both in the House and outside of the House on this. This is a priority for me. It is something, and I hope to be in Galway in the next couple of weeks on this, and I've visited other coastal communities in this. This is something that, from our department's point of view, we are taking really seriously.
I don't doubt your bona fides in relation to this, and I have on record for praising the Office of Public Works. My difficulty is the delay. The timeline for the CFRAM finished in 2016, and 2016 became the date for implementation and review. And we have a date in Galway for the Spanish Arch and the surrounding areas, and with over 940 properties to be protected for 8 years' time. That's my difficulty, as is my difficulty with the lack of knowledge in relation to the county. So, I can quote any of these figures, but what is the point? If there's an interdepartmental group, surely there must be a specific brief for when they're to report, and to come back with questions to say in due course is unacceptable given the threat that we're living with and given the floods that we've seen in Galway and elsewhere throughout the country. This is one of the most urgent things that we must deal with so that we trust and that we can work with you.
I don't think it is one of the most urgent things. I think it is the most urgent thing in my book because of the volume, the number of people that live in our coast. Our largest urban centres, Dublin, Cork, Limerick, Galway, Waterford, and we also have a relationship with Northern Ireland, Belfast and Derry. Our large urban centres are all coastal, and we are an island, and the sea is rising around us. So it is, if we are threatened by anything, we are threatened by the sea in this country. The sea is our greatest risk at the moment. So the only commitment that I can give you, Deputy, is that from my perspective, this is, for the last year, is the thing that has preoccupied me most in the department in terms of, I suppose, exercising my government colleagues to make sure that this is raised. And while there was a lot of air, hot and cold spewed in COP 26 and 25 and 24 and 23 and every other ones, how Ireland is going to deal with its coastal defences and the communities of the Spanish Arch and Kings Island and every other island community around the coast is going to be absolutely critical for this generation and for subsequent ones. So from my perspective and the OPW's ones, can I assure you this is our #1 priority at the moment.
Question.